Hello, everybody, and welcome to Empire's weekly podcast. I am Stephen Ogden, your guys' host. You guys should already know me. It's good to see you. It's good to be here with you guys. Sorry for the delay and missing a couple weeks. I've had a few family issues. My grandfather passed away recently. May he rest in peace. And of course, my family has been dealing with the funeral and vacation and everything that's going on with that. So anyways, it's good to be here again with you guys. Today's topic is on solitary confinement. I will be speaking about not only a bunch of statistics and other people's experiences, but I will be speaking about my own experience and the nightmare that I went through all the years that I was locked in a bathroom. But we'll get to that here in a little bit. First, I want to start with a few stats. So this is from solitarywatch.org, June 16th, 2022. More than 75,505 people are held in solitary confinement in the United States prisons. That was as of June 16th, 2022. So 75,000 Americans. I remember growing up in Greeley, and I think when I was a kid, the population was 60,000. I remember my grandfather's town pulling in, it was 5,475 was the population of their town. 75,000 Americans are held in cells the size of a bathroom. They don't come out. Sometimes they don't come out for 2 or 3 days at a time. They come out for a shower. They come out to be locked in another room, and then they get taken back to their cell. The other room has a pull-up bar, a little bit of fresh air, not much. By 2022, more than a dozen U.S. states had placed restrictions on the use of solitary confinement, including New York, which banned the use of long-term solitary confinement in 2021. The New York law prohibited holding people in isolation for more than 15 consecutive days and made it completely off limits for several categories of people, including those under the age of 22 and over the age of 54, pregnant women, and individuals with mental and physical disabilities. When I went in that cell, I was 18. I didn't come out until I think I was about 22. So, I mean, it's crazy thinking about that. But Colorado, that's where I'm from. That's where a lot of my knowledge comes from, other than the statistics I read. Colorado started leading the charge, I think, in 2013. A man had been released from prison after doing 4 years of solitary confinement and having a complete mental health breakdown. He got out and he assassinated the director of the Department of Corrections over solitary confinement. This is wrong. I mean, I'm not praising him for doing that. There was a better way to handle it, of course, but that's what he did. He broke down and he did that. And Colorado seen the dangers and the damage that was happening, and they started only allowing inmates to be locked in solitary confinement for about 15 days at a time. That kind of changed. People started taking advantage of the situation, realizing that they could assault people and get away with stuff and only have to do 15 days in the hole and be released back. Colorado has changed that. If you get caught with a weapon, you do about 6 months in the hole now. Well, I mean, you go to isolation for 6 months. I think they call it restrictive housing, RH. They also have a program called SHU, Secure Housing Unit. But what it comes down to, it's solitary confinement. That's what it is. It kind of throws me for a drag. I was really excited that Colorado had been leading the charge on it, and then they backpedaled. When so many other countries and so many other states are leading the charge and doing away with it, because there's a better way, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. But I want to talk a little bit about the mental health problems of solitary confinement. So studies have found that prisoners held in solitary confinement face higher risks of suicide, depression, anxiety, and psychosis more than any of the other prisoners locked up. In one study of California's prison system, researchers found that from 1999 to 2004, prisoners in solitary confinement accounted for nearly half of all suicides. In 1995, a study of the federal prison system found that 63% of all suicides occurred among inmates locked in special housing status, such as solitary or psychiatric seclusion cells. my experience in there, I don't know how many people I've seen time and time again attempt suicide. I would see guys break away from officers and run and try to dive down the stairs. I've seen guys hang themselves. I remember one experience, the unit next door to me. I was in A5 in Colorado State Penitentiary, CSP. A guy in A4 had committed suicide. He covered up his window so the officers couldn't see it, and he hung himself from the vent. The officers thought that he had barricaded his window and was acting up. He wasn't responding. The officers opened his trace lock. They put a shield in front of it, and they sprayed OC spray onto his dead body multiple times. And then they realized that he had been killed, or that he had died and hung himself. And they opened his door and they put him on a gurney. And I remember looking out my window and seeing that guy blue on the gurney, and blue and red, actually. The red was from the OC spray. And I just felt so horrible. But I think I had been in my cell for close to 18 months at this time when this had happened. And I remember thinking to myself, at 20 years old, that maybe that was the way. Maybe he had it right. Maybe that's what we had to do to get out of that cell. I went into that cell when I was 19. I can't really remember, 18 or 19. I think I was 19, actually. And I had been told in the county jail that if I acted up and got in a lot of trouble, they would move me out of the county jail back to prison. Now, I was told this by the older guys, and prison is different than the county jails. The county jails, you have nothing, you're locked in your cell. It's pretty much solitary there too. You're locked in your cell all day. You get out, you go to court. Commissary is extremely expensive. It's just a very, very, very bad experience. So us kids would do anything to get back to prison, where we could have a TV in our cell and 25-cent ramen noodles and play cards, and just. So I acted up. I got myself in some trouble, thinking they would send me back to prison right away. Well, they did. And when I got back to prison, they housed me in solitary confinement. I was in that cell for 18 months. I was released back in the general population, where an inmate had started, we'd argued back and forth. We ended up in a fight on the yard. And, that's prison politics, a lot of, crap that goes into that. If I would have said no and didn't fight the guy, well, then I would have been getting, taken advantage of and put in situations where I couldn't have been able to walk the general population. So as a kid, I cared about that stuff. I thought there was only one way. So I fought the guy, and because I had been out of isolation for less than 90 days, they put me back in it. And then I was back in solitary for another 2.5, almost 3 years. So I had a 90-day break. Talk a little bit more about my experience in there, like what I went through. I'll tell you about my first panic attack. I had been in my cell for, I don't know, I want to say about 3 months, maybe 3 months, and I was breaking down. I didn't know how to handle it. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't sleeping right. I didn't have a routine. I hadn't been schooled on how to do this time in there. And I was living in the bathroom, and my emotions got the better of me. And next thing I know, I couldn't breathe. I wanted out. I was kicking my door. I was just panicking, and I had hyperventilated until I blacked out. And when I came to, a guy across the way, his name was Snoopy. That was his nickname. He started talking to me and schooling me about how I had to get a routine in my life, and how I had to get a hold of myself, how I had to lock who I was away. It was hard on me. It's still hard on me today, looking back at all that. Like, it's a big part of how I react in life today. It's a nightmare. And I think that society needs to realize that it ruins people. When you send kids into those cells because they don't act right, I never stabbed anybody. I never killed anybody. I was in prison for escaping and running away from juvenile facilities. I wasn't in there for robberies or murder and I acted up. I listened to the older guys how to get back to a prison, and I ended up in a cell for years, and it affects me every day. I'm lucky to be in a prison right now where my door doesn't lock, so I can come out when my anxiety gets the better of me. I don't have a restroom in my cell, so I can come out whenever. So it's just I just would really advocate for anybody out there that watches this let's find a better way. Let's find a solution. I'm not saying that people that are murdering and taking advantage of and preying on people that they don't need to be punished, and they don't need to be kept away from other people when necessary. But when funding is involved, they get to hire more officers, they get to get more funding for hazard pay and all the stuff that goes into budgeting for these prisons. That plays a big part of who gets isolated and how they get isolated. And society as a whole needs to start taking a look at that and saying, hey, are we going to lock these guys in for budgeting reasons? Are we going to lock these guys in for corona reasons? I would just really advocate and try to find a better way to handle this. I was talking about adjusting and how I adjust today and things that I deal with. I remember getting out, and I was blessed. My father had got me into college right away. I was living in Fort Collins, and I had literally walked out of that solitary cell. They strip searched me. They put me in chains. They drove me to the front where my mom and my stepdad had picked me up. My mom she didn't understand it. She was like, why is he in all these chains? What's going on? And, oh, ma'am, your son's dangerous. He's getting out of isolation. And, and then I went home, and I started college, I think, the next Monday. And the anxiety that I had felt just being in that class, I was trying, and I was really hiding it. I didn't want anybody to know what I was feeling because I didn't know if it was normal. I didn't, after reading all this stuff that my father had sent me on solitary confinement, I really realized now that what I was feeling was normal, and that's what everybody else that gets out of those cells feels like. So, that's I don't know if I really did adjust or if I've just found a way to, cope. Substance abuse has been, my bane. It's been something that, one of the worst things, and then, using amphetamines does not help with, the paranoia you feel about getting stuck back in the cell. So, I coped completely the wrong way. I know one thing that I've been really blessed with over the last couple of years. When I was in Jefferson County Jail, I was given a therapist. Her name was Caroline, and she was just a godsend. She helped me with so much and was there to speak to me. And I don't think we really spoke a lot about solitary too much, but I did write an essay that she's sent to a place called truthout.org. So I'm hoping they'll get to publish my essay on solitary confinement, I think in September. Let's see, there's a quote by Senator John McCain. He did a lot of solitary time. He was a war prisoner. He was a hero, and he was locked in a cage in a cell for years. And his quote was, "It crushes your spirit and weakens your resistance more effectively than any other form of mistreatment." Nelson Mandela, who's one of my heroes, called his experience in solitary confinement the most foreboding aspect of prison life, saying that there was no end, no beginning, and only one's mind which can begin to play tricks. And it's the truth, man. I don't speaks for itself. There was a social psychologist named Dr. Craig Haney who interviewed people in Pelican Bay State Prison and told the New York Times that 63% of men kept in solitary confinement for 10 to 28 years said they consistently felt on the verge of impending breakdown, compared to 4% of individuals in maximum security prisons. He reported that 73% of people in solitary confinement felt chronically depressed, compared to 48% of those in maximum security settings. Now, that impending doom, that impending whatever, I felt it for years. I always felt like the world was going to fall on top of me. No matter what I did, no matter how good of a mood I was in, I always felt like that. And I think it followed me out of there. And it catches up to me at the worst of times. Sometimes I just don't know why I feel like everything's about to fall down. You know, maybe it's leftover remnants from that cell. But to wrap this up, from Psychology Today magazine, there was a quote that I really wanted, it really struck with me, and it says, "The verdict is clear. Solitary confinement causes such severe psychological damage that it is tantamount to torture. Prison systems in other countries, such as Germany and the Netherlands, have found ways to function effectively while greatly restricting its use. We can too. The United States needs to be more humane to the more than 2 million of its people that are in U.S. corrective system. And the first step towards doing so is straightforward. Stop engaging in torture via solitary confinement." I agree with that quote. So thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Have a good day.